Like to have everything neat and tidy. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear fish lovers, you heard it. Millions of fish die every year on their spawning migration because of structures, they fall, their way is blocked. And hundreds of thousands of fish are damaged, hurt, or even killed while migrating by the turbines of hydroelectric power stations. I would like to thank you on behalf of the Federal Office of the Environment, and I thank you for your support to facilitate fish migration in Switzerland again. You, with your knowledge and your specific activities, contribute to mastering this big challenge in the next 15 years, because this is unfortunately urgently necessary. The President of the Council of States already said it. The program for fish migration is based on a political compromise, and the environmental associations demanded in 2006 with their initiative that the Swiss waters be renaturalized, and we now have a good or well-balanced compromise. 4,000 out of 15,000 highly affected kilometers will be restored or redeveloped, and through the new subsidizing directive, the operators get 20 million francs per year. So the redevelopment of the use of hydropower, the reactivation of the floating matter and of the pebbles and the sea ground, all this is part of legislation, and we from the government have to become active here, and we are happy to do so because we know about the big problems that our water bodies are facing. We will do everything, and we are already doing a lot in order to be able to implement the law in a timely manner and to achieve the goals. And here we also count on the operators of hydroelectric power stations, and we also count on our cantonal partners who also have to play a major role here. However, I still need to tell you that since the implementation of the revised compromise, many politicians have called it in question because the farmers' lobby, they just do not want to accept this compromise, and this is why they constantly issue new initiatives like the new Pamela initiative, which aims to give the cantons free decision-making powers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very important that fish can migrate again, as this secures the survival of fish resources. But we need to see this in a bigger context. This is about biodiversity, diversity of life. And this diversity is acutely threatened in Switzerland, and this loss is a creeping, constant loss. And we can't afford it, even though many people do not want to understand and do not want to hear that. This loss forces us to act now. We can't wait, because biodiversity and its ecosystem performance are the basis for our life and economy. Each loss of a species weakens the overall system that our being and activities are based on. This loss is not only a biological one, but also an economic one. The economic loss of ecosystem performance is estimated to be 4,000 to 18,000 million Swiss francs per year, and scientific studies have calculated that. So this is up to 1/4 of the global GDP. Just imagine that. And if no additional measures for biodiversity are taken, we need to expect an increasing loss of this performance. And for Switzerland, we expect this to be 25 billion francs. So this is a massive amount of money that we will lose if we do not take care of biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, we always need to take into account and think of it. We need to become active now, because it is up to us, not to the next generations. The Parliament has taken the first few steps, and in 2012, the Federal Council passed the Biodiversity Switzerland strategy with 10 concrete measures, and the Ministry for the Environment was asked to develop a roadmap, an action plan with concrete measures, ongoing measures for biodiversity, like the implementation of this revised Water Protection Act, already contribute to a reduction of the biodiversity loss, but it is by far not sufficient to reach or protect biodiversity. Additional measures are necessary. What is central here is that we create an ecological infrastructure of protection sites and locations, as this is the basis for daily life. And the term ecological infrastructure is what we use because we already know what infrastructure is. Imagine gas lines, power lines, railway lines. And for nature, the waterways are such infrastructure, and it must be maintained and upgraded. And therefore, connectivity is a key issue. And this brings us back to our core topic of today. Before I come back to the key points of renaturalization, I want to talk about the use of hydropower in Switzerland, because this is not ecological yet. And this is why we are having this meeting today. But do not misunderstand me. Hydroelectricity, hydropower makes sense, and it helps Switzerland to reach its climate targets and to back out of nuclear energy, but it must be adequate. And 90 to 95% of our water bodies are used for energy generation. It doesn't make sense if we use a lot of money to damage the last intact water bodies. Especially the small ones should be protected. The use you get, the benefit of a small power station, does not justify the great damage it causes. The Environment and Energy Commission of the National Council supports this approach and demands that the minimum threshold for subsidies be increased from now 300 kilowatts to 1 megawatt, so that in future no new small power stations are built in nature-like waters. And we also think that the retrofit and upgrading potential of big power stations should be used if this can be done in an ecologically compliant way. And there we have good examples where this results in more electricity produced and better protection of the environment, so that the waterways can really be a source of life for our life in Switzerland. The cantons and the power station operators need to become active regarding the redevelopment of the tailwater sections. And here, 20 years after the expiry of the original term and 5 years of extension of this term, not many things have happened so far. And this is why my office introduced interim steps where sanctions can be applied if these milestones are not reached. And you will soon hear about the results of these interim steps and results before I will come back in the end and talk to you after my colleague. Yeah, hello, good morning. I will give you an overview on revitalization and renaturalization. At first, show you where we are. I will then talk in slightly more detail about the passing of fish migration. Good thing. First, we are well on our way, but there are still major challenges that need to be mastered, and this is why we are here today, and we really ask you for your support. So the topics and goals, you see them on the left-hand side on this chart. I will show you also how they are financed. So it was already said that the aquatic environment must be excluded from building construction activities. Therefore, 20 million Swiss francs per year are provided by the federal government. The rest must be borne by the cantons and municipalities, and it is important that the cantons here make sure that they have the necessary money, otherwise they can't draw on the federal subsidies. Then regarding hydroelectric facilities, here we as consumers pay. Every time you switch on the light, you contribute to make sure that fish can better migrate in future. Small joke. So, but there we have 50 million for the next few years, 50 million per year. So it is all well coordinated. We have here our roadmap, and the red rectangle shows you where we are now. So it was a sector planning, and over the last year it was all aligned in order to make sure that integrated planning exists. So the deadlines are rather ambitious. We have some more time for revitalization. Regarding revitalizations, this is the estuary into the Inn. It was recently revitalized. And I want to show you with this that
this is something that Peter already mentioned. The objectives and the objective also in the course of revitalization and restoration is to remove these barriers, these structures in rivers within the framework of planning, and this has to be coordinated with passability to ensure that we've got entire corridors for fish. on the retrofitting of hydropower. This is in greater detail, and I'm going to focus in particular on passability. It is upward and downward, upstream and downstream migration to avoid any damage and injuries. And in addition to the upper categories, the passability is not totally new. This is already included since 1993, but what is of relevance is more funding, and therefore we're seeing a greater effect right now. Now, a few words about the methodology. This is organized by the cantons, also by the associations, and some non-profit organizations that are not listed here, but they do play a very important role. See, here you see the individual parties, the different steps. In the first step, the cantons did most of the work. There are some interim reports that were presented in 2012 that we assessed and were discussed with the cantons. Then this will be discussed with the power plants and the operators, and then cantons will be consulted by us, and the relevant measures will be discussed. What will we do? Well, next year we will start the development of restoration measures. This is of great relevance for the power plant operators, but of course the cantons play a very important role here as well. All of that has to go hand in hand with a request for damages and, of course, the implementation of the measures, and then the funds would have to be approved. And what is very important is monitoring to determine whether the projects led to the intended objectives.
And as I said, our office has a consulting and support functionality. So we developed an implementation manual as well as an Excel tool containing all the technical and ecological parameters of fish migration. It was all assessed with this tool. An expert evaluation was also needed, and this helped us to draft an overall package here. Another important tool is this best practice manual, which has become a Bible of fish migration in Switzerland. As we could see at different conferences and meetings, and this includes all the technical and ecological requirements. DWA took over a lot of these things, so we did not reinvent the wheel here. We just wrote down the state of the art. There are also reference examples, references, where you can see how it was specifically implemented. Workshops and exchange of experience was very important in the past. We had these workshops twice a year. We wanted to learn from each other. Then the interim results, they are preliminary results based on the interim reports. And regarding the hydro peaking and bed load balance problems, there we estimate that 573 power stations, they were examined, and we found that 100 to 130 power stations need to be redeveloped, and 1,000 kilometers of rivers are affected by hydro peaking. Here's an example of the Oberhasli power station operator. And there was a working group where the canton and our office also cooperated. And now on the bed load balance, what is bed load? It is not just the water flowing in a river, it is also pebbles and all that gives fish the possibility to spawn, to live, to swim. And the bed load must flow, but not at the velocity of a fish, of course. So where are we here? 1,000 facilities need to be redeveloped here. So only 1/3 of them are hydropower related. So it's also barriers and pebble collecting facilities that need to be redeveloped here. Where are these? This is an older map, but it shows the deficits. Red means big deficit. This is in the north of Switzerland mainly, but also in the Alpine region we have certain deficits. Then we come to the improvement of fish passing. 1/3 of the facilities needs to be improved for upstream and downstream movements. And 600 for upstream and 600 for downstream, and about 1/3 of the existing facilities are really functional, do really work. There are serious problems that some facilities have, some related to maintenance, lack of maintenance, dried out, or where there's no water or not enough water flowing through it, and downstream migration and fish protection facilities are quasi non-existent in Switzerland. But we will know more next year once we have evaluated the final reports. We did not only develop these guidelines, we also drafted an overview where the big migration corridors are for the migratory fish, certain species, and dark blue are the key migration routes. This is important for the cantons to know where they need to cooperate with other cantons, where they need to reach agreements. But it is also important at the international level. We have heard that salmon comes back, and the Conference of Ministers agreed on the 2020 target in Basel. And it is important that Switzerland can also focus on these targets and take a concerted approach. I would also point out to you that there will be a workshop tomorrow where Daniel Bernard will talk about or will present the example of a concerted action in the Aare area. Now an outlook, how will things continue? The cantons are still intensely working on that, and this will especially be the case next spring when the final reports are there. Implementation is secured through cantonal orders and decrees, so that financing is also secured. And here I would also like to point out that we have in Switzerland a financing mechanism for that, so financing will not be a problem. And about 30 retrofit or redevelopment projects have already started, and it's good to see that people are already working on that, and we are looking forward to any feedback we can get. And it was already said, downstream migration is something that we quickly need to take action on, and we at the Federal Office of the Environment are convinced that there are solutions to that, integrated solutions, especially for small facilities. For bigger facilities it is more difficult, but this can also be mastered. It is only important that we cooperate and that jointly we make sure that we can achieve that. We also need research for that. We need support from the researchers. We know a lot about migration of salmonids, but about other species we don't know so much, and here the researchers also need to become active. So I hope you have seen that we have started, we are making progress, the first results are coming in. And I want to finish with the good example of the Strappel power station, the first bigger downstream migration fish path in Switzerland, and with our monitoring we will see how well it works. But I think it is a motivating example for to convince people that other hydroelectric power stations can also start with downwards migration facilities. And now, Franziska, the floor is yours again. So, you will have your coffee break in the next few minutes, so I will be brief. But I would still like to remind you of the political process behind that. It is always good if you know why are we doing things as we're doing them. The revised Water Protection Act is the result of hard work of associations and authorities because they wanted to protect rivers, rivulets and waters and streams. And this all happened against the backdrop of the Living Water initiative, for which 160,000 signatures were collected. And this initiative aimed at reaching a revitalization of all Swiss water bodies. However, this initiative was withdrawn, and the counter-proposal was accepted. And this is something where we want to give the cantons enough time to fulfill their own targets. What is the content of this law? Protection against flooding, protection of habitats, protection of flora and fauna, and protection against pollution. And the water bodies should not only be protected against pollution, but they should be upgraded. They should get more space again, become more nature-like, and be able to perform well. And the connectivity of rivers should be guaranteed in order to assure or facilitate biodiversity. Furthermore, nature-like bodies of water should act as filters for groundwater, and they should also be there as recreation areas for our population. And because there is the economic point of view, there's the nature point of view, but there's also the well-being point of view, the well-being of our inhabitants, and therefore we need to protect the nature, and we are still not doing enough to guarantee that. So the core elements of the legal revision is more space for the river bodies and the reduction of the negative impact of hydroelectricity on the water system. So we have a lot of work to do, but I see you all here. I see a lot of commitment, a lot of good people. Therefore, I would like to thank you for your interest, for your activity in this context. And last but not least, I would like to thank the organizers, the WWF, ERAC, the Water Agenda 21, and you for your work and your commitment to make sure that we can reach our ambitious but necessary goals. Thank you very much.